What if I told you that the classic sci-fi idea of an AI boss, making huge decisions for a major company, what if I told you that's not some far-off future, but it's actually yesterday's news? So how on earth did we get here so fast? Let's dive in.
All right, so our story really kicks off with a prediction that was, believe it or not, outdated the very second it was made. It's a perfect example of just how fast this is all moving.
So get this, back in 2015, the World Economic Forum made this big, bold prediction, right? They said we'd probably see the first AI on a corporate board by 2026. The only problem? It had already happened. A full year earlier, in 2014, a venture fund in Hong Kong had already appointed an algorithm named Vital to its board, and the trend just kept going. In 2016, we got Alicia T, the first AI manager of a publicly traded company, and then, just last year, a humanoid robot named Mika was appointed CEO in Poland. Yeah, CEO. The future is definitely not waiting around.
Okay, so we've established AI is already in the boardroom. The next logical question is, how? How are companies actually doing this? Well, it turns out there are two main ways they're going about it.
First up, you've got what's called the Digital Command Center. The best way to think about this is like one giant, all-seeing brain for the entire company. It's pulling in data from absolutely everywhere in real time to give a complete picture and suggest what to do next. The other approach is the fused board. Now, instead of one big AI, imagine a whole team of specialized AIs. You might have one that's a genius with finances, another that's a pro at scouting new directors. They all work together, each bringing their own unique skills to the table. To see what a digital command center looks like in the wild, let's look at the oil company ADNOC and their Panorama system. And let me be clear, this is not some small test. This is a real system, right now, managing a company worth over $60 billion. It's processing information from 10 million, that's right, million sensors. It uses a digital twin, which is a perfect virtual copy of all its operations, to run simulations. It even uses blockchain to keep its records totally secure. And the plan is, by 2030, to have it plugged directly into clients and investors. It's just a stunning example of how powerful this approach can be.
Of course, handing this much power over to an algorithm, well, it's not exactly a walk in the park. It comes with some massive questions and some really serious risks we need to talk about.
And this, right here, is the absolute core of the debate. I mean, we expect our human leaders to be fair, to be just, to be unbiased. But can a piece of code that was trained on data from our very flawed world, ever truly live up to that?
You see, bias doesn't just magically show up in an AI. We put it there, usually without even realizing it, and it happens at three key stages. First, the input. If the data we feed the AI is biased, say from decades of biased hiring practices, the AI just learns that this is the norm. Second, the training. The model then looks at all that biased data and gets really good at finding and reinforcing those patterns. And finally, the programming. The humans who are writing the code can accidentally build their own unconscious biases right into the AI's logic.
This leads to another huge problem, the black box. With a lot of these really complex AI systems, we can see the information that goes in and we can see the decision that comes out, but we have no idea how the AI connected those 2 points. We can't ask it for its reasoning. And this lack of transparency is a massive hurdle for accountability. I mean, think about it. If an AI denies you a promotion, how can you possibly appeal that decision if literally no one knows why it was made in the first place?
So, faced with these pretty scary challenges, regulators and researchers are scrambling to build some guardrails. They're trying to, in effect, write a rulebook for the robot boss.
One of the biggest ideas on the table is something called explainability. The European Union, for example, is pushing for what they call a right to an explanation. This means if an AI makes a big decision about you, you have a legal right to know why. And what's really fascinating is that a potential solution might come from a law that was written decades before anyone was even thinking about an AI director.
Way back in the 1970s, the US passed a law that said if you were denied credit, the bank had to give you a clear, understandable reason. This one simple rule basically prevented banks from using super complex black box models, because if they couldn't explain the decision, they couldn't legally make it. And this 50-year-old law gives us a really powerful blueprint for how we can demand transparency from our new AI managers today.
Here's another really clever solution being proposed. Create what's called a dedicated operational context. It sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. You write 2 different sets of company policies. One is for humans, written in plain language based on principles and human judgment. And then you write a second set of rules just for the AI, written in machine-readable code,
based only on hard, measurable data. This gives the AI a crystal clear, unambiguous rulebook to follow. It takes away all the guesswork. So how in the world do you translate a fuzzy concept like fairness into computer code? Well, you break it down into concrete, formal principles. You actually program for informed consent, making sure everyone involved understands and agrees to the AI's role. You write hard and fast rules for non-discrimination, and you program the AI to ensure a fair statistical distribution, meaning it has to constantly check that its decisions aren't unfairly hurting or helping any single group. It's really all about making our human values machine-readable.
So far, we've pretty much been talking about what's happening right now. But where is all of this going? Let's zoom out for a second and look at the long-term and, frankly, kind of mind-bending implications of all this.
This brings us to a concept you might have heard of, probably from science fiction, the technological singularity. The basic idea is that at some point, we could create an AI that's smarter than us. And that AI would then be able to design an even smarter AI, which would then design one that's smarter still, creating this exponential, runaway explosion of intelligence that we can't control.
Now, this isn't just some philosophical thought experiment. You can see how this could play out as a new kind of corporate arms race. A company with a slightly smarter AI director is going to be more efficient, more profitable. That extra profit then allows them to build an even better AI, which makes them even more competitive. It creates this feedback loop that could lead to just a handful of companies accelerating away from everyone else at an incredible, almost unbelievable speed.
And that brings us to our final thought for today. This quote is about Sophia, a robot that was granted citizenship in Saudi Arabia, a country where human women face severe restrictions on their rights. It just forces you to confront the deep, uncomfortable ethical paradoxes we're creating here. As we build these new kinds of intelligence and start giving them real power in our world, what does it say about our own values? That is a question we are all going to have to answer, and probably a lot sooner than we think.